The illegitimately appointed Councilman Hodges wants to raise your taxes, and we're going to talk about that today. It's time for some straight talk. McClendon Chisholm. I'm Bunker Bob Steinhagen. This is the Bunker Bob Show. Well, yes, good afternoon on this Tuesday. I'm grateful to have you with me today to talk about issues that relate to the tax rate increase. And if you joined me last week, then you had the pleasure of seeing the Doctor of Finance Scott Turnbull and of course the Iron Lady Adrienne Balcom, and it is always great to have the two of them with me, and hopefully I will get them back very soon to talk more specifics about the tax rate increase. Today I am going to talk a little bit about it, and I'm going to highlight some of the problems that are going along with it so that you understand what's really happening as it relates to this tax rate increase. What they're telling you is information that is simply intended to mislead and deceive you. And ironically, the guy who was just appointed to fill an empty seat on the city council is the same guy who left office, who resigned from office as mayor, and which led me to become mayor, appointed as mayor. This guy who had tried to get his friend and patient of his on city council by going around my back as a member of city council, an elected member of city council, by the way. This guy is... The question is, what do you do if you resign in disgrace as mayor? Well, you come back as an appointee on the city council and try to raise everyone's tax rate. It was Nathan Hodges who made the motion to increase the proposed tax rate to 16.5 cents. And that is what Nathan Hodges is standing by, even though his rhetoric is different. And it's very interesting how Mr. Hodges is trying to create the perception that this is not something that's all and done. And he's also providing misinformation that's really intended to kind of keep you away from what's really happening, because I want to highlight some very important facts about the tax rate and about this proposed tax increase, which is monumentally more than what you think. On the face, it looks like a 1.5 cent tax rate increase, when in fact it is significantly more. I want to highlight again what the Rockwall Hilarious banner had in its paper. It showed the notice of the property tax increase to 16.5 per 100 valuation, and so the proposed tax rate is, as it says, 16.5, preceding last year's and the year before that. And thanks to, oh, by the way, and thanks to me, we lowered the tax rate. Just so you know, when I was mayor, we lowered the tax rate. So this idea, remember when they ran for office, every member of the city council, with the exception of Hodges, who is a wolf in sheep's clothing in so many different ways, every one of them talked about the idea, tried to create the perception that I had raised taxes, and in fact, that is not true. What we did was we kept the tax rate exactly where it is, at 15 cents. And what we did with that, with the extra revenue that came in because of the valuation that the county appraisal district assesses on homes, which essentially goes up for all of us. What we do with that excess is we put it toward the debt. Now remember, the debt is costing us over 3%. If we put that money into a savings account, we'd make less than 2%. So as fiscal conservatives, obviously we want to focus on where we can get the most bang for our buck, but not this council, not this council. No, what they're focusing on is they're saying that, now look at this, the effective tax rate is 14, a little over 14 cents, but the rollback rate is 11.9. Now, how is that possible? Well, that's a really good question, because it was actually a question posed to me by a viewer in Fate. And this individual is fit to be tied about Fate's fate as it relates to the tax rate increases that's going on in Fate. Just to give you an idea of what's happening in Fate, let's not forget, Fate is very different than the city of McClendon Chisholm. So is Royce City. So is Rockwall and all of the other cities that are located in Rockwall County. Fate has 30,000 people. The city of McClendon Chisholm has 2,500. So it is a demonstrably larger city. But here's the thing. Fate has a growing commercial business. Basically, they brought in a lot of new businesses. And remember, when we talk about Richard Bloom, or excuse me, Councilmember Bloom, Jim Bloom, he is focused on the fact that we need to bring in more business for the city because that will keep our tax rate low. Really? Facts prove, and again, I hope I don't spoil the surprise. It's not really a surprise, but Scott Turnbull has been working on some data that he'll be presenting hopefully in the next couple of weeks. It will be before they make the final vote on the tax rate, but he's going to focus on the fact that cities that have commercial growth don't see their tax rates lower. They actually see them increase. So when people like Jim Bloom and Mayor Short and Mark Kippett and Mike Donegan tell you that the answer, the panacea is business growth, we will show you from an empirical point of view that that's simply not true. So why then, as you look at this tax rate, you look at the effective tax rate and you look at the rollback rate, why is it that the effective rate and the rollback rate is different? In fact, typically you will see the rollback rate is typically higher, about 8% higher than the effective rate. Understand that the effective rate is essentially what you're going to be bringing in from the new build, from the new properties that are built, those types of things. It's the anticipated result, and that effective rate is basically the anticipated result of that growth. And as property values rise, that is why the effective rate is different than the tax rate and the proposed tax rate and the rollback rate. Well, this individual in Fate asked me, why is it that this is backward? You should have the rollback rate should be higher than the effective rate. The answer is real simple. Because as a fiscal conservative, I'm a fiscal conservative, so is Adrian Balcom and Scott Turnbull and Wayne Orchard and Sim Woodham and Jim Herron. We were all fiscal conservatives. We got into office because we were outraged over the fact that Gary Moody and Steve Hadfield and Jack Pulling, with the support of the Mark Kippetts and Mike Donegans of our city, put us into long-term debt to build a 5,000 square foot City Hall building for $2.125 million. A 5,000 square foot building for $2.125 million, where the citizens of McClendon Chisholm had no vote. In fact, the citizens of McClendon Chisholm didn't even know about it in most cases. The only thing, I know I've talked myself blue in the face on this. I've said this many times, but there are people who've never seen the show or who are new to the show. I keep reminding you of what is true. And what is true is that the city council, the only thing back then that they did, they held a town hall meeting or something like that, where about 50 people showed up. No more than that. And I was one of them. And at that meeting, they said the cost would be $1.5 million. And just a few months after that, without any discussion, without any hint that that was going to change, on January 25th of 2015, the council, Steve Hatfield, made a motion to approve a bond for $2.125 million because apparently the cost was higher than they had anticipated. Sound familiar? Does that sound like government to you? Well, that's why I got in office. That's why so many of us got in office. Adrian, Scott, Jim, Sim, all of us were frustrated and outraged over the lack of fiscal responsibility that was going on. And I just want to make sure I'm not getting pinged for something going on with the show. Last show, if you saw the last show, I had a microphone issue, and gosh, this happens a lot, unfortunately, because I'm moving my equipment so much. Sometimes I forget to turn off certain things. So about the last quarter of the show, you actually have clean sound. So anyway, hopefully the sound's good here. I digress. Going back to why we were in office is because we were outraged over this debt that we were put in. It was free from a rollback. Couldn't do anything about it. And the tax and spend liberals, Gary Moody and Steve Hatfield and Jack Pullen, they believed that that was a good thing to put us into debt. I believed it was bad. So did everyone else. And so we focused on whatever the cost of, whatever the tax rate was, whatever the effective rate was, we were not going to raise the tax rate. That was the one thing we were not going to do. We were committed to that because we just needed to keep control of the cost of our city. The goal is not to grow the size and scope of our city government. It is to control it and keep it minimized. And so our focus was to pay off the debt early. We're paying 3%, I think, somewhere around there on the okay, audio is good. I'm getting a report. Good. I'm glad to hear that. We get 3%, or it's costing us 3% as a city, as citizens. It's costing taxpayers 3%, somewhere around that, on the debt. If we tried to increase our reserve, which basically we have enough reserve to sustain us. You have to explain why. For a city that you now have a fire department. We can talk about that when Adrian or Scott get back with me, because we'll talk more specifics about those types of things. But ultimately, we have a very small city. And when I was mayor, I wanted to keep it small. Unfortunately, obviously, as some of you who are actually informed, who haven't been lied to and bought the lie that I grew the government because I brought in the fire department. The fact is, we brought the fire department in because the volunteer fire department, a corrupt volunteer fire department, I should add, and I've talked about that how many times? Probably tens of times on this show. All the corruption that's going on. If you're unfamiliar with the corruption, just watch the knife wielding man video. It'll infuriate you as much as it will inform you. But this volunteer fire department, this corrupt group led by a very corrupt fire chief, basically said, well, if you don't pay us what we want without an audit, thanks Mark Kippett, by the way, Mark Kippett, if you want to know why you don't have an audit on the McClinton Volunteer Fire Department, which, by the way, is still an entity today. It's still in existence today. If you want to know why we could not get an audit, is because Mark Kippett, as part of their representations, now remember, his wife is on the city council, because Mark Kippett is as a representative of the McClinton Volunteer Fire Department, who is negotiating with us, the city. Think about this. Is because Mark Kippett made that a non-negotiable. We cannot do anything if you keep the audit on the table. We were asking for an independent audit. We were asking for a certified audit by an independent accounting firm going back 5 years, the same accounting firm that had been auditing our city for the last 8 years, long before I got into office. So this is, if you want to talk independent, that would be independent. Thanks, Mark Kippett. Next time you hear Mark Kippett talk about fiscal responsibility, you can just know that he is selling you a bill of goods. So we focused, when we were in office, when I was in office, we focused on paying off the debt. What that does is, because anytime you put money toward debt, it is free from a rollback. It's protected from a rollback. So rather than changing the tax rate, we just focused on debt, on getting rid of that debt. Thanks to Scott Turnbull, the doctor of finance, he helped guide us into some smart planning to advance a lot of that payment. And we've saved hundreds of thousands of dollars, I think, just on the interest saved. So when people say, hey, we want to save for later, we really want to, if you hear a member of council, watch this, and I'm going to get to Nathan Hodges' post in just a little bit, and we're going to focus on this, but I want you to remember this, that when people talk about how they want to save for the future, if you are in debt, if debt is guiding you, is your guiding principle, if you're mired in debt, you've really got to ask yourself, whatever you save, if you're making 2% on what you're saving, but it's costing you 3% on your debt, do you want to be saving or do you want to be getting rid of your debt? A fiscal conservative would say, get rid of your debt. The sooner you get rid of your debt, the easier it's going to be to save, and the bigger impact it's going to have on you in the long term. And understand, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have savings. The city has savings, though. That's the problem. It's another lie that those on council continue to perpetuate. Slick Willie Dahl, just a few months ago, talked about the big lie about how, as mayor and this city and the city council that served when I was in office, that we had spent hundreds. This is a quote, and I've done the show on this. I did a show where I'm showing you his video where he's saying this, that hundreds of thousands of dollars, the city spent hundreds of thousands of dollars litigating a tower issue for a cell phone tower, and which was absolutely, completely, incontrovertibly false. Not only did we not spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on attorney fees litigating that, we spent $65,000 litigating it and won a $130,000 settlement. So in fact, we didn't lose money. We actually gained the city money. That's something that they don't want to talk about. Why? Because the only way they can win is to lie. That's the only way they can win. And so that's what's happening here. And so why is, when you look at the tax rate and you look at the tax rollback rate, the reason the rollback rate is 11 or 12 cents is simply because this city council is not concerned with debt. It wants to spend money. So let's put this in perspective here, folks. What you're seeing with the rollback rate, that's 8% over what we would normally spend. That's where you get that rollback rate. And so because we've had so much growth in our city, and because the county appraisal district, which is out of control, continues to increase our property values at just a crazy rate, which basically you keep the tax rate the same, because your property value goes up, well, you're paying more in taxes, which means more revenue for the city. You got to think about this, that 12 cents compared to the 15 cents. So they're proposing 16 cents. They're proposing a 16.5 cent tax rate. The rollback rate is basically 12 cents. That's 4.5 cents, not 1.5 cents that they're raising your taxes, because they're not putting the money toward debt. What they're doing is they're trying to suggest that this is all about saving money. So there's a public notice for the fiscal year, and of course this was also in the hilarious banner. And what they are saying is that this budget will raise more total property taxes than last year's budget by $129,870, an increase of 22.4%, and of that amount, 53,296, less than half of that, far less than half of that, is from new property owners. And that, by the way, that portion is protected from rollback. So anything new coming in would not be impacted. So essentially, they want to, instead of getting rid of the debt, they want to focus on trying to create the illusion that somehow our city is in need of a reserve fund. Why are they saying there's a reserve fund? The real reason, because we videotaped the budget meetings. They had 2 special meetings, remember, and did the city record them? No, we did. Because the city, just like they had an 8-hour work day, and William Dahl chastised people for not showing up, that if you want good government, then you need to show up at an 8-hour meeting all day. You need to take the day off, take a Monday off, is what he's saying. And from morning till evening, you need to be there and pay and sit there and not be able to participate, by the way. And understand that when they did this little quote unquote workshop, they didn't broadcast it, they didn't or record it. And on top of that, they arranged the room so that, and I think I've got a picture of it somewhere, they arranged the room so that they were facing away from the audience. So you weren't even, you couldn't even be a part of the discussion if you wanted to. I don't have it on with me right now, but you can look at one of the little thumbnails for my show, and you'll be able to see how it was arranged. It was intended to keep citizens away. So the 2 budget meetings that they had, they intended so that people wouldn't be paying attention and would just buy their load of excrement. Basically, is how I'm saying it, because that's essentially what it is, or what happened. So when the city council tried to tell us, or now that the city council is trying to raise the rate, what they're trying to tell you is something else. I'm going to show you what they're telling you. What is really happening is, again, a complete misunderstanding and a complete another example, I should say, of why the city council is so incompetent, why it's poorly led by a mayor that is completely feckless and driven, I think, completely by Mr. Mark Kippett. I think he's a puppet master. I think he's the one driving the ship, and I think that this is par for the course when you get a Pennsylvania liberal an East Coast liberal like Mark Kippett. When he's running this show, which he is, this is what you get. The reason they want to raise the tax rate, the reason they're talking about putting money in reserve, is because they have been given. They have a misunderstanding about the fact that if something goes wrong in Sonoma Verde development, which is basically made possible through a PID, and there are two portions of that PID payment that every homeowner, lot owner in Sonoma Verde makes. One is to their lot, that pays off their lot once they've paid the $20,000, $30,000 on that lot over 20 years. Then they're free from that payment. But there's a second payment. It's a maintenance fund. That maintenance fund is kind of a savings account that people pay into over the long haul, because they have streets, they have sewer, they have other infrastructure that will depreciate, that will degrade, and will have to be repaired at some point. The idea is that maintenance fund is going to fund whatever repair comes up in the future. What they're being told is that if something were to go wrong, and let's just say that a street goes out, or they have a monumental disaster in Sonoma Verde, and it cost, let's say, let's say it cost $1 million and there's only $500,000 in that fund, that management fund, or that maintenance fund, I should say, then the city will have to come up with the money. That's what they're being told. But what they miss is that the city may have to provide a short-term loan. The city will have to repair that. But the problem is that on the next tax bill, every homeowner within that phase of development, it's my understanding it's based on phase. So wherever the repair was made, if it's inside phase 1 or phase 2, whichever phase it is, that cost will be divided up among all of those homeowners, and they will receive that bill, if you will, on their next tax bill. Now, the question is, well, if the city doesn't have that $500,000 in the bank, how are they going to get it? Very simple. The city can take out a loan. And guess who has to pay off the interest of that loan and all the cost of that loan? That's right, the people who live in that development. You see, citizens, you and I those of us who don't live in Sonoma Verde, you need to understand that if the city is trying to, the mayor and this city council is going to try and burden us with the responsibility of the long-term maintenance of Sonoma Verde, they are in violation of the law. They are violating the fundamental principle of the PID, what was told to taxpayers and what is legal. So when they talk about having to have this money in reserve, they need to be very careful because they are treading on very thin ice. And if they make any kind of move that is going to stipulate that the citizens of McLennan Chisholm are on the hook for that and not the citizens, those who live in Sonoma Verde, if they're going to try to put that burden on everyone, guess what? They are going to have a legal battle on their hands. This is why they're taught. This is where all of this came from. But that is not what you're hearing, and that's not what you're going to be hearing on social media. And it's not. They've already started. It's interesting. We haven't heard from Slick Willie Dahl in a while. I wonder why. Could it be because members of council are saying, you're saying some pretty stupid things. You're saying things that are completely untrue, and Bunker Bob over there is highlighting every time you say something that is in error. Which means I have had, if you've been watching, you've seen show after show where I have brought you tape after tape, clip after clip of William Dahl saying things that were completely and totally untrue, misleading and deceiving. Now, we don't hear from Mr. Dahl, but we do now hear from someone else. This is, of course, the illegitimately appointed Nathan Hodges. Now, Nathan Hodges, let's remember who Nathan is. He is the former mayor of McLennan Chisholm. And Mr. Hodges is the same mayor that resigned from office because, and I hate to keep rehashing things for those of you who have already seen this, who have already heard this, but bottom line, we had Jerry Klutz died in office, and we wanted to replace him with someone that Jerry Klutz would want to see in his seat, but also someone who mirrored Jerry Klutz's values. And not only did I think so, and Wayne Orchard thinks so, and we did so publicly. We announced that this is who we were thinking about nominating. Her name was Adrienne Balcom, by the way. Rita Klutz, Jerry's wife, gave her thumbs up and endorsed this as well. We held a reception for Mrs. Balcom so that citizens could see and meet Mrs. Balcom and ask her questions and give us feedback whether or not they thought she was a good person to be seated in that seat. And all the while I was doing that, Nathan Hodges, as mayor, was going behind my back, talking with members of city council and colluding in an attempt to get his patient, a person who he receives a financial benefit from, on the council. That would be Mark Kippett. Yes, the East Coast liberal, whose East Coast liberal wife is on the council now. Yes, he was trying to get his friend on the city council and did so by violating the Texas Open Meetings Act. So while I was doing things openly and transparently, Mayor Hodges was doing things behind closed doors. In fact, he even sent me an email telling me that there are other people who may be interested in that seat. And I said, yes, I'm aware of one, Rhonda Davis, who was I believe at the time, the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I said I was aware that she was interested. She had submitted something. I said, if you know of anyone else that's interested or is maybe proposed, would you please let me know so that I can vet them? Guess what Mayor Hodges did? Nothing. I received no response email from him. So it wasn't until that council meeting when we were going to make nominations openly and publicly, and by the way, deliberate about why and talk about why, the values, what we thought was beneficial. Little did I know that Nathan Hodges had been working behind the scenes, and it came out. In fact, the funniest part about it is Wayne Orchard, who also was endorsing Adrian Balcom, who was also doing it publicly, who hosted the event for Mrs. Balcom so that citizens could see. He was approached by Mayor Hodges, but he never told me. And after the meeting, I told him I was angry with him. Why didn't you tell me that Mayor Hodges contacted you? And he looked at me and got in my face and he said, Robert, if I did that, then I would be violating the Texas Open Meetings Act. You see, when Mark Kippett and Mike Donegan, when they made these false and baseless allegations that we had violated the Texas Open Meetings Act, these are wolves in sheep's clothing who want you to believe things that are simply not true. These are the most hypocritical people on planet Earth. Wayne Orchard, at that moment, I was like, dude, you've got my absolute respect. But he did disclose during the meeting, in the open meeting, that, hey, Mayor Hodges contacted me. Gary Lovell said, Mayor Hodges contacted me. Councilmember Short said, Mayor Hodges contacted me. That is, and this is all on public record. This is all on audio recording. Yeah, Mayor Hodges resigned from office. So now he got on city council. And how did he do it? Did they do any kind of vetting of him? Did they, when they nominated him, did they say, here's why we think he would be a good person to sit in this office? No. In fact, I've shown you on this show. I showed you what took less than 60 seconds, where the mayor said, I nominate Hodges. Then Bloom says, I go with the mayor's nomination. Then it was second, and then they voted, and Nathan Hodges was made council member. Bottom line, there's no way on earth that is even possible for them to have appointed someone to fill an empty seat without having open deliberation and discussion. It's empirically, it's irrefutably impossible. That's why the Texas Attorney General is starting to get involved in this. So, Mayor Hodges, council member, appointed council member. Let's just call him what he is, corrupt. The values that Mr. Hodges brings to this council is consistent, I will say, with the rest of the council. So there you go. Let's read what Mr. Hodges had to say in his online post. At the city council meeting last night, after much deliberation, all right, I'm going to stop there. Much deliberation? Much deliberation? What are you talking about, much deliberation? Much deliberation. You know we showed you what the deliberation is. Folks, if you haven't watched the last city council meeting, watch for yourself. Look at the deliberation. Here's what happens. Well, I'm gonna clue you in on what you're going to see. What you're going to see is the city council confused. You're going to hear Lorna Kippitt say, "Well, I don't even know. I don't know what these numbers are. I don't have enough information. I feel like I'm in the dark here." This after they had an 8-hour all-day meeting, then 2 separate budget meetings, 4-hour meetings, special meetings, where again, they turned the table to face the council, not the audience. So if you came and watched, their backs were to you. They had these 2 meetings, and they came to the city council meeting, and they were absolutely confused about what was going on. So when Nathan Hodges says that after much deliberation, you also should look back at the budget meetings. Look what Nathan Hodges brought, what value he brought to the city council deliberation. Let me give you a hint. 0. He provided no wisdom, no guidance. Here's what's interesting. Now, I'm working on something right now. Can't talk about it, but I'm working on something right now. You got to ask yourself, when they go, all of a sudden the mayor has to take a little winky tinky. So he does a little, he adjourns the meeting for 10 minutes. Goes take a winky tinky. Mark Kippitt follows him out. Comes back in and then says, "Let's go to executive session." Then they go into executive session. They come out of executive session, and guess what? Voila! All of a sudden, they have a plan. They want to increase the tax rate. And who is it that makes the motion to increase the tax rate? It's none other than the appointed, the corrupt council member, Nathan Hodges. That's right. What happened? What changed? What's different? Let's continue, shall we? We unanimously approved a proposed, look how he puts that, he puts it in all caps, proposed tax rate increase for the upcoming fiscal year to 16 cents, basically, 16.5 cents. The current rate is 15 cents. I think it is important to point out that this is a proposed increase rate, and it is not the final rate for the coming year. It's simply a starting point for the council to work from. The council is still reviewing specific items within the budget, and we'll be cutting back where we can. This is they want to seem like they're deliberative, that they're making some real decisions here. Okay, so how did they get to this point? Well, we find that as we keep reading. The increased cost to fund the newly acquired city-supported fire department. Here's something that Scott Turnbull called me, and he highlighted. He goes, Nathan Hodges is saying that we have a newly acquired city-supported fire department. He said, this is curious to me because we've always had a city-supported fire department. The volunteer fire department was city-supported. 100% of the budget of the McLennan-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department for the last, 6-8 years, 10 years, was taxpayer funded, 100%. And the city of McLennan-Chisholm was the overwhelmingly was the greatest. Gave the biggest bulk of that. So yeah, it's always been a city supported fire department. Actually, what we have now is actually a city owned fire department. I think that's what he means, a city owned fire department. I think that's a distinction that probably should be highlighted there. So city owned fire department, and the expectation. Let's keep going there. And the expectation to keep the current level of service is one of the main factors considered in that proposed increase. I want you to think about the fact that the cost to the fire department in the budget for the cost to taxpayers for the fire department for this year is no different than last year. Practically no different. The difference is marginal. Just wanted you to marinate on that a little bit. Another consideration is to begin to plan long range for future fire equipment need and eventual replacement of aging equipment within the department as required by regulations from the state. Okay, this is what you call political speak. This is where politicians say, "Oh, we have to do it. It's state mandated." Do you know how little is state mandated? Do you know bunker gear, having 2 sets of bunker gear is not state mandated? Did you know that? I mean, there's a lot of things that they say. In fact, the former fire chief, who was not really he was a fake fire chief. This is a guy who was not TCFB certified. He had, in his entire career as a professional firefighter, in his entire career, he could not have fought more than 5 structure fires in his entire career. But this guy told us that we needed a ladder truck. Our city needed a ladder truck. Ladder trucks, by the way, are $1 million plus, and you have to have a special driver, and you have to have an additional person to crew a ladder truck. But I digress. So this is more of the same rhetoric. Yeah, it's as required by regulations from the state. Okay, let's just be I want to make this absolutely clear. Any regulation by the state, if that is the measure by which Mr. Hodges wants you to believe that an increase to your tax rate is necessary, then he needs to demonstrate that those regulations are requiring a greater cost to the citizens of McLennan Chisholm, because I am stipulating as a matter of fact that the regulations by the state require no greater cost to the city, that the city is actually doing more than is required by state law, far more than is required by state law. But that's neither here nor there. I guess that doesn't really matter. It really sounds good, doesn't it, to hear that, hey, we're doing this because well, we have to. We're the state regulations. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. You dry it out, fertilize your lawn with this rhetoric. Let's continue. One particular item that concerns me is considering the long-term stability of our community. We have very little set aside as a reserve in case of extreme situations. What extreme situations might those be, Mr. Hodges? Name them. And if you name the Sonoma Verde issue, we've already answered that. You've demonstrated that you're an idiot. That's what that means. And the reason I'm calling Mr. Hodges an idiot is because anyone who would deceive the citizens of McLennan Chisholm to further a tax and spend liberal ideology and agenda is exactly that, an idiot. There is nothing fiscally conservative about what Mr. Hodges is proposing, by the way. I think this puts the city in a precarious position in an emergency situation. Guess what, folks? Let's say that a tornado came through the city of McLennan Chisholm and just took everything out. That's an emergency situation. And do you know what? There's no city in the state of Texas that is prepared for such a thing. None. There's no such thing. That's why you have state, that's why you have federal aid when disasters occur. He's trying to create a misperception. He's trying to scare you. Why? Because he's a liberal. Mr. Hodges is a liberal. He doesn't care about facts. He doesn't care about truth. He wants to further his own liberal agenda. The council's goal is to begin gradually build up those reserves over the next few years. Again, the question needs to be why? For what reason? I would argue, Mr. Hodges, if we need new fire equipment, let's say in 10 years, hey, let's get rid of the debt in 10 years. Because once you get rid of the debt, if you're right now, I think we're putting of the tax rate from the current 15 cents. Right now, I think 4%, 4 cents of that. I think the mandated is 1.8 cents of it, or 2 cents of it is in the tax rate. We had added to that so that we were paying the debt off early. But once that debt goes away, the tax rate then reverts back, and you literally have to make a tax rate increase. Here's what the city of Rockwall did. They did this, I think it was last year. They basically had kind of a similar thing occur where they had some debt where that they had paid off, and so then their tax rate would have dropped like 6 or 7 cents. It was significant. And so what the city did was they said, well, we've got these projects that we would like to do. And they talked about streets, and they talked about infrastructure and things like that. And they said, without raising your tax rate, if we just keep your tax rate where it is, which is effectively raising your taxes because that portion of your tax rate goes away, we can do that, and we can fulfill all of these things by keeping the tax rate where it is. And guess what? The people of Rockwall, the city of Rockwall, voted in favor of it. They supported that. But this city council doesn't want to do that. They want to spend money now. If the city of McLennan-Chisholm, if these were real fiscal conservatives, they would say, hey, let's get rid of this debt because in 10 years we're going to need new fire equipment. Well, in 10 years, if we need new fire equipment, well, then we can take out a bond for that equipment. We can ask the citizens, hey, can we just leave the tax rate where it is so that we can buy this fire truck? You know what the city's citizens will probably say? Yes. You know what I would say? I would say, yeah, if we actually needed that, I would actually support it. I would actually support it after we got rid of our debt because we're being fiscally responsible. How many fire trucks do we have, by the way? Do you know? Do you know how many fire trucks we have right now? We have 2,500 people. Think about it. I'm not going to answer your question. I'm not going to answer this question. I want you to think about it. I want you to drive by the fire department and ask yourself, why do we have so many fire trucks for a city of our size? Just something to think about. Let's keep going. Okay, so for the next few years, let's keep going there. I wanted to make everyone aware of the tax situation and what the council's thought process was. And if he was honest, he would say the council has no idea what we're doing. That would be an honest way of telling citizens what's going on with their tax situation. I have no idea. We are completely clueless. They are wanting to increase costs. They want to spend more money. That's what's happening. But Mr. Hodges is trying to create the misperception that somehow they're trying to save money. For the sake of the city services and future stability of our city, I do think this adjustment to the tax rate is warranted. See that, folks? He said, this is just a proposed tax rate, but I think this increase is warranted. The illegitimately appointed member of City Council, Nathan Hodges, is saying that it is warranted to increase your taxes, not 1.5 cents. It would be if they were going to be putting the increase in revenue toward debt, it would only be 1.5 cents. But since they're not doing that, they're actually not going to be paying off any of the debt in advance. They're going to pay off the bare minimum payment so that they can have Christmas. They can buy the things, the fun stuff that they want. They can grow the size and scope of government. Get ready for a police department, folks. And I will tell you this, 16.5 cents will not come near to be near enough. I'm about to talk about fate in a second. But let me finish this up. We must meet the financial obligations presented before us, particularly with the fire department. Okay, why don't you explain what the financial obligations to the city are? How about this one? A year from now, the SAFER grant is going away, or it's going to start going away. You'll have another year where you'll get some funds, but that following year, there will be none. What are you doing, Mr. Hodges? Explain to the citizens of McLennan what exactly it is you are doing that is going to get those who are in the unincorporated part of our fire district, where more than half of all the fire calls go, where more than half of all the populations go, those people who contribute absolutely nothing to their fire safety, that the citizens of McLennan Chisholm are paying for. What are you doing to get them to be a part of the solution? Isn't it true that you're doing nothing? That's the fact, isn't it? Over the next 2 regularly scheduled City Council meetings in September, the budget will continue to be reviewed and revised in order to establish the tax rate for the fiscal year 2020. If you have questions or concerns, yada, 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 he's happy to visit with you. Yada, 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 yada. Do not hesitate to voice your concerns at City Council meetings. I'll tell you what, if you voice your concerns at City Council meetings, they will not listen to you for a second. But if I were you, if you're a citizen, you should be coming out and voicing your concern. You should be asking some questions like, what are you doing to get those who are in the unincorporated area of our fire district who contribute nothing to our fire safety, yet where more than half of all the fire calls go, and where more than half the population of the fire district live? What are you doing to get them to contribute to their fire safety? What is it that you're doing? Why do we have more than one fire chief? Why are we paying firefighters in a fire department, by the way, that sees less than 1 call per day, that sees less than 1 structure fire per year? Why is it that we're paying overtime to the firefighters? These are questions, by the way, that the City Council never asked. In any of these budget meetings, they never asked. Kind of begs the question as to what's really going on here. Are they really concerned about what's happening in our city? I don't think so. I think they're asleep at the wheel. The city of Fate, interestingly, the viewer who watches this show, or obviously the viewer who watches, a little bit redundant, sorry, did send me. We've been going back and forth because he's letting me know that they're very interested in the reason he contacted me because I led the tax rollback fight. He was asking me questions about specifics about how that works and how they can move forward. Excuse me. One of the things I found interesting about this whole thing is that in the Dallas Morning News, in an article in Sunday's paper, printed paper, there is an article, and I don't have it to show you up, but the title of it is your government running up the score in the last days of the old property tax law by raising taxes? And it highlights the city of Fate. The city of Fate is proposing a 17-cent tax rate increase over the effective rate. What's interesting is that this reporter, he says that Betancourt, who is the state representative or state senator who proposed this from Houston, who proposed this bill where it requires that cities that are over a population, I think, of 50,000, if they increase the tax rate over a certain, I think it's 3%, 4%, then it is an automatic rollback. It goes to a vote of the people automatically. Any of the cities under 50,000, that would be Fate, that would be Royce City, it would be McLennan Chisholm, we would still have to do a petition. And you'd still have to get, I thought it was 10%, it's actually 8%. 2 years ago when we did the tax rollback petition, we got 20% of the citizens. So anyway, he was asking how we did it. We've been going back and forth, but one of the things I found interesting about this article was that the reporter says, Betancourt told me that Fate's leaders are looking to pass a budget with a 17% annual increase. Holy cow. But when I called Fate City Manager Michael Kovac to check, he told me the proposed budget increase is actually, sit down for this, 27%. 27%. So that's a monumental increase. This is for a city that has some pretty good businesses inside it. It's got lots of developments, lots of developments. Those people who tried who had been arguing that I had somehow given away the city of McLennan Chisholm when I gave, when the city council and I voted to hand over 4,000 acres that were in our ETJ that we had absolutely no control over, none, where they were going to put a mud district in. And if a mud district went in, guess what wouldn't be there? They were proposing, they were telling us they were going to be putting apartment complexes there. And we could do nothing about it. Oh, but they wanted you to believe a falsehood. This is your Mark Kippett's, your Mike Donigans, your council members. This is how Keith Short and Jim Blooming, idiot, got elected, by sharing false and misleading information. Had we not done that, guess what? They would be under construction right now, and we could do nothing about it because we gave it to the city of Rockwall. Rockwall said, "Look, we've got a comprehensive plan. We've got all the apartments that we need. We're not doing more apartments." Like it or not, we saved the city from that. But somehow this would have helped our city. No, it would have increased our crime rate, I can guarantee. Why? Because more population, not in apartments, but the greater the population, the greater the crime. There's a correlation there. And I realize that correlation doesn't always mean causation, but in this case, correlation is causation. So we can say that empirically. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to protect our wide open spaces. What am I trying to do? Protect our wide open spaces, limit the size and scope of our city government. City of fate. This is a city that people like Mike Donegan and Mark Kippett and Lorna Kippett and Keith Short, these are the people that want to tell you these are the cities that we want to kind of emulate. We want to be like them. I keep saying, why don't we just be like us? What's wrong with us? What's wrong with wide open spaces? Oh, in the rhetoric, they will say, oh, we support wide open spaces, wide open spaces, wide open spaces. You'll hear that a lot because they know that's a talking point. But when they get in office, they don't mean that. They talk about lowering taxes. We're not going to raise your taxes. We're going to keep your taxes low. Lorna Kippett put that on her mailer. So did Jim Bloom. So did Keith Short. Let's see. So did Slick Willie Dahl and Trudy Wosner. So did they all put it on. We're going to keep our tax rate low. What are they doing right now? We need a higher tax rate. Why? To get us out of debt? Nope. We want to keep that debt rolling. Guess what, folks? It is a complete ruse. So the city of McLennan, so the city of fate, has already had. I just got a text that says one of the fire trucks isn't even being used. So I mean, just think about this. Just think about the insanity. Now understand, folks. The city of McLennan Chisholm, the fire department, the fire chief said, we're not going to serve the city of McLennan Chisholm anymore. If you don't pay us everything that we're asking, we're going to stop serving you. This corrupt fire chief and Mr. Kippett, they said, you either pay up, shut up, and look the other way, or you're not going to get fire protection. I'm an uncompromising conservative. I didn't give a damn whether I won or lost the election. All I cared about was protecting the citizens of McLennan Chisholm. So did Scott Turnbull. So did Adrian Balcom. So did Jim Herron and Sim Woodham. We all kind of put politics aside and said, screw you. We're going to protect the citizens of McLennan Chisholm. If you're telling us and if you're walking away, then we will have to set up our own fire department, which we did. Oh, and then once we did, and once they won the election, once the fire chief and them helped these yahoos get in office, oh, then they're going to merge over. By the way, where's the bank? What's in that bank account? Here's another question to ask. If you're going to go to the public hearing, you need to ask the city council, why is it? Why do you not see a line item under audit, under the professional fees for auditors? Why is there not a line item that, like there was when I was mayor, to audit the McLennan-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department, an entity that was supposed to put all of its assets over to the city of McLennan-Chisholm. Why is it? Ask the city council why it is that even though the McLennan-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department had bought brand new bunker gear for their fire department for the firefighters, why is it that the same firefighters who moved from the McLennan-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department to the city of McLennan-Chisholm, why is it that they didn't bring their bunker gear with them? Why is it that the city of McLennan-Chisholm had to spend tens of thousands of dollars on new bunker gear? These are questions that you should be asking the city council. These are questions that the city council should be answering before they increase your tax rate. In my opinion, the tax rate should be 12 cents. If they're not going to pay off debt, then the tax rate should be 12 cents. They're not increasing the cost. They're not increasing the budget for the fire department. So why do they need more money? Oh, that's right. In case there's some catastrophe. Ask them, what catastrophe are you waiting for? Be specific. I wanted to just highlight real quickly that the gentleman who I've been talking with went to the city council meeting last night. They had their first public hearing. He said, get this, this is in the city of Fate. They had over 300 people attend that public hearing for their proposed tax rate increase. 300 people, and he said not one person. I haven't confirmed this, so this is what I'm getting from him. He was there last night. He said that not one person spoke in favor of the tax rate increase. Now here's the thing: if you hear people come to our city council meeting and in favor of the tax rate, I'm going to guarantee you who they are going to be. I can predict who they're going to be. They're going to be the same people who stood up and urged us to support the city council in their effort to increase our tax rate by 228% for a 333% budget increase. By the way, what is the increase in the budget this year over last year? How about the increase in the budget over the previous year? What's that increase? You see, these people wanted a 34-cent tax rate. If Wayne Orchard and I had not organized ourselves as a group and started getting word out, this was 2.5 years ago, and started making people aware of what's going on, we would have a 34-cent tax rate today. Or excuse me, maybe it was 32 cents. So, folks, going to the public hearing, you need to go to the public hearing. They're not going to listen to you. They're going to do whatever they want anyway. Mark Kippett is driving the ship, and I guarantee you, Mark Kippett's going to stand up, and if you, he's going to stand up and talk. Let me show you one more thing. I love this, and it's something I can't fail to bring before you. You got to see this for yourself. So apparently today. This happened earlier today. This is from the McLennan-Chisholm Fire Rescue. McLennan-Chisholm Fire Department is currently responding to an animal complaint. Please be on the lookout for responding emergency vehicles. Active 911. First of all, what does that mean? I hope I'm misunderstanding what's happened here, but it kind of looks like they're not going to be able to service the people. If you have a fire emergency, you're not going to get the fire department. That's what it sounds like. Responding to an animal complaint. It almost sounds like we're starting to make a case for a police department. Boy, does that sound familiar? It sounds very familiar to me. Folks, I'm here to tell you that none of this is new. All of this, what's old is new again. because those who are in office have an agenda. That agenda is not to be fiscally conservative. It is not to protect our freedoms. It's not to protect our open spaces. It's not to limit the size and scope of our city government. It's not to keep our taxes low. It is to grow government. It is to take. I'll tell you what. There's no one more generous than a liberal politician with your money. Liberals are great at spending taxpayer dollars. They are lousy at spending their own and saving their own. They are lousy, especially of saving taxpayer dollars. They are lousy at saving and protecting taxpayers from needless and wasteful spending. Folks, this is just the beginning. We've got more to come, so stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. That way you get notified whenever there's an upcoming show, so that you know that either I'm going live or you can watch it later. So I look forward to seeing you next time, and until then, I hope you have a great day. Blessings to you all.